We were talking about your awesome books and your writings and all of those things. And, you know, I think your writings and your teachings are so incredibly interesting, and they're such a part of who you are, and why people love you and why people flock to the temple, and really want to know what you're thinking and how to improve their spiritual practice through everything that you teach. But I'm really interested in why you started writing.
By not by choice in some ways. So my first book was City Magic, and so I had become a witch, joined a coven, done all the stuff that you do, and then I was working just after college in Boston all the time, but I was commuting back and forth because I was still living in New Hampshire, and you're trying to do witchcraft while you're in a city.
It's
So I
hard.
was sneaking things on my break in the park outside, and like it was back in the music days of the 90s, and we all know what we're like in the 90s.
I don't know what you're talking about. I can't imagine what you were like in the 90s.
I think you and I were very similar. But I
If
think it
you
was very,
mean if you mean
late nights and
promiscuous and fabulous, yeah, that's
excellent.
what I was doing. Well, actually, in the 90s, I was it was the early 2000s for
Yeah, you're a
me.
little younger than me.
Late 90s, early 2000s for me.
So yeah, so I was just at clubs at night because I was working in the music industry and everything. So I was
Yeah.
trying to fit things in and seeing the magic everywhere. And I just kind of kept a notebook. And that notebook became, the essence. A lot of people were like, "Oh, you should write about that." I was like, "Oh, whatever."
Yeah.
But enough people had said that to me. I started to compile a little book that became City Magic. And then, interestingly enough, the temple series I was teaching at that, once I lost my job, I ended up teaching witchcraft full time. And I had these notes, and people still talk about it to this day. Who are those early classes? Like, did you have a black binder? Because there's these black binders I give out of the notes, and
Yeah.
they got longer and longer and longer. And
Yeah.
someone's like, "You should really make that into a book." And I was like, "You think so?" And then I, put something together, and I got into some weirdness with my first book, and publishing battles, and who wants to be where and everything.
Yeah.
And so I ended up leaving Red Wheel Wiser, and Llewellyn was really interested,
Yeah.
and so that's how it all started.
Amazing. It's so interesting because, you always assume that people are exactly who they are when you meet them, right? So for me, you're always the same person to me as you were that day when we were in ritual and cracking ourselves up, right? So people that might be listening to this and might be learning about you and your work for the first time, they're going to know who you are right now in this moment and just assume that that's who you are. I mean, I think that I get that a lot of people just think like, oh, this is who you are. You're this girl who makes olive oil on TV, or you've written this kitchen witch book, and that's what you do. But there's like so much more. So I'm interested to know, have there been in your life to this point, how do I phrase it? What influences that were not pagan, not witchy, that influenced the path that you find yourself on now? Like, was there something as a child, something as a teenager that influenced your path that you find yourself on now?
Early 90s glam metal.
Early 90s glam metal influenced the great and powerful Christopher Penczak, one of
Absolutely.
the three founders of the Temple of Witchcraft, in his path, in his spiritual path. You
Absolutely.
definitely need to explain the shit out of that.
Well, because I am actually, and I know people don't understand or experience this, but I think you'll also, I know from our conversations you get what I'm saying. I am painfully shy.
Yeah.
I know it's not that perception,
Yeah.
as a public speaker and a teacher, and I'm really loving and friendly with my friends, but like I'm an introvert and I
Mhm.
don't like to go out in the public. And I mean, I do it all because I think it helps me grow. So when I was going to school for music, I would do opera by day and I was in a rock band at night. And those were some of and we're kind of on that weird influence of late glam metal to like the beginning of alternative, like Nirvana had just come out at that
Mhm.
time. And the ability to be able to empower yourself by being in front of a stage on one hand and be able to sing in Italian shows like, oh, you hear that and you think, how could I possibly do that? I don't know Italian, but there's a whole process as a singer, and
Yeah.
you do it. And then to be like, I used to joke that it was, opera by day and heavy metal by night. And once you've been behind in a biker bar behind chicken wire and a bar fight comes out and bottles are thrown and everything, you're like, New Age stuff can't scare me. I mean, the idea of going to a New Age festival or a pagan festival, it's the worst that could happen. They throw
Right.
insults at me, or it's at a the metaphysical store, they're going to get their yoga pillows at me. Like it's, you know, it'll
Right.
all be okay. It's kind of what it taught me, because there was a lot of moments in both of those settings that things were not okay.
It's
You know?
that's a really fun perspective. I too have a background in music, which never at the level at which you were, but I'm definitely not like you, a shy person, not necessarily shy, but I love being just just off center as I am definitely off center, right? I'm just left of center, but that's where I'm very comfortable, right? Like I'm super comfortable. I was always a theater kid. So I'm happy being the supporting actress. I'm happy being in the chorus. I'm happy being, as long as I get to be on stage, I'm good, but I don't need to be center stage.
See, that was even a stretch for me in high school. I was stage manager.
Were
So I was
you
like
real?
behind the stage. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? You were always kind of leading people and putting people in their place. No,
One
you're
day.
always, I mean, maybe a little bit. Do you find that too? Like, you just again from our friendship and our conversations, like we're very similar personalities in terms of like how do I say it so it doesn't sound bad? Like I like to make sure that coordinating. You're the coordinator,
Right.
right? Like you're the person who's like, okay, well, let's do this and let's do this. The big picture, what should we do kind of thing, and then coordinating the group to do the thing. Um, were you always that way? Like if you're saying you're a stage manager, were you always that way? And that translated into organizing the Temple of Witchcraft, which of course is this amazing organization here in New England, where so many of us find such a home in our spirit because of what you've built there. But at the core, that's it's not just a spiritual thing, right? It's an organization.
Right. Yeah, I think yeah, you kind of got me with that. It's weird. I've always had this push and pull of like introverted artist who sees something that is missing and has to go build it.
Mhm.
You know, I went to an all boys Catholic school for high school, and not so big on the arts program, as you can
Yeah,
imagine. You know,
yeah.
they tried to push me into football, and I was like, "Are you crazy?" But I had a big build, and they're like, "Oh, you could, you know, stop somebody." And I was like, "I can't catch a ball. It's not happening."
Cannot imagine you playing sports. I
No,
can't.
I could do the bare minimum to get through, you know, gym credit, but even then
Right.
was horrific.
Right.
And so, you know, there was no art club. So I was like, there should be an art club here. So, you know, I was really pushing what little art program we had to do a whole art club, and eventually kind of moving into that. And that led into stage crew and stage management, the creative side of things in high school. And just that we didn't have a music program. So, you know, it was like, how can we get more music into here? So it was just looking at what was missing. When I worked, you know, for my first jobs, I had the music experience in playing. And then as soon as I graduated college, that kind of died off. We had a very Spinal Tap, I guess, stage spectacularly.
That's great. That's great.
And then I ended up working for a record label, and I loved it. And I started out as somebody's assistant and kind of worked my way up, but
Yeah.
we didn't really have an office manager. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll do that too. And how do we
Right.
organize things? And, you know, things went poorly in there. I went back to being the office manager, just kind of keeping track and making sure everybody had what they needed. And as much as I'm out front for the temple, which I'm always not super comfortable with, there's still a lot of that, you know, how do we build the organization, and does everybody else empowered? And I'm really always trying to take steps of how can I step back and let other people step forward. But it's hard when you're the author, you know, so people have the
Yeah.
expectation, you know, they want the guy on the books to come out and do the interview. And I was like, oh, well, somebody else can go out and do the interview, or somebody else can go take the meeting, you know.
Right.
And sometimes they can, but sometimes you still gotta go out there.
It's so interesting because I've been asking this question throughout these interviews on this podcast, and there's such a theme where we're all so similar in certain ways. Where you went out and started these clubs in school, and does that create a sense of a space where you can build a container of like-minded people? To keep
Right.
yourself, to keep yourself surrounded by the type of energy that you want to be surrounded by. And I think that's really interesting because that has been a theme in everyone I've spoken to. That's, in high school, I organized this thing without really realizing that I was doing it. And then again, in college, I did what needed to be done to bring things together. And it's interesting, especially for you who are the leader of a community or part of a leadership team, of a community, that you were organizing people and creating these spaces where people could be creative or expressive from such an early age. Have you ever really noticed those parallels?
Not until we've talked about it today, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I
That's
don't really think too much about
amazing.
high school. It's kind of amazing to think about, you know?
That is
Thank you.
that is really amazing to see that. I think oftentimes we are so focused on the work that we're doing now and where we are now that we sort of forget what influenced us to bring us here. And so that's why I'm so interested to learn those things. I think most people probably don't know that you had a background in music. They know you as Christopher Penczak, the a great and powerful, amazing. That's how I'm going to refer to you from now on. Like the great and powerful Oz is the great and powerful Penczak, and that's only because there's a Z, so that's what I see in my mind. Um, but, but I think people don't realize that there's so much more to you as a witch, because all of those experiences influence your spiritual practice and helped you find the path that brought you where you are now, right? So I'm thrilled that you would share that with us. I know before we got cut off, we were talking about your new book, The Witch's Hut, which I'm, like I said, totally in love with. Is there anything else you have coming forward that you're excited about coming in the future?
I do. I actually have a super busy publishing schedule this year. The
Yay!
next book should be out soon. Within the month, I would think it'd be ready to be ordered. It's called The Lighting of Candles. And it's
I
the
saw
second
that
in my
announcement.
practical magic series, my magic series. So that should be out soon. That we got proofs back from the printer, so it's looking good.
So tell us a little bit about what can we expect from that book?
So the whole series is taking the idea of different types of spell casting and going in great detail. So this is going to be really about all different types of candle magic. But you know me, like I can be practical, but I also can be philosophical, you know? So
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what's the essence of light? And why are the witches the light bearers? And why do we keep candles in temple? And what does it mean to tend to fire in a temple? And actually, you know, you'll I think appreciate this, the family connection. So a big part of the book for me, although maybe it's not the practical side that people are going to look for, was really relating the idea of tending an altar candle when you were home. And that was something my mother and I did when we first got into witchcraft. And whenever anyone was home in the house when I was living there, and I kept the tradition, you know, as I've moved out and lived with my partners now, and now it's a part of the temple traditions, is that idea of tending a candle, tending the light in the world, keeping a sacred flame. And so candle magic is wonderful to get what you want and to get the jobs and everything. But I think there's even a deeper connection to tending light. And I think of so many of the witchcraft goddesses as like light bearers into darkness. And I think of the way the world can be, the more we can kind of bear witness to light while we're present in our home and hearth, you know, is a huge part. So my mom used to keep hers in the kitchen, you know, a lot of the times, and we'd have, you know, a special altar place. We have ours on the hearth in the temple office. There's a fireplace that we don't use as a fireplace, but we use it as an altar, and we keep our candles burning, which is not just the temple candle, but if we're doing work for somebody or
Mhm.
you know, a community member's ill or something, we have various shrines where we can keep candles going, and we move them back into the fireplace when we want to keep them going overnight.
Mhm, mhm.
So
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
excited about it.
That sounds like a really, and that's kind of a departure for you as well, isn't it? In terms of that type of magic, in terms of what you're putting into a book, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't do a lot of craft books. Like I always think
Yeah.
craft is the auxiliary, you know, it's great to learn how to cast spells, but there's a lot more to magic and magical living. But sometimes you want to do a good candle spell. So, you know, there's lots of different versions of it, and talking about different types of candles and fire magic and oil lamps and all that good stuff.
I love that that's something that comes from something you used to do with your mom in the kitchen. I know we've talked. I unfortunately never got to meet Rosalie, but I have heard all the amazing stories about her and the warmth that she brought into the world, and into the temple as well. Um, so isn't that wonderful to be celebrating her with a candle, like, and the warmth that, like you said, into the darkness, here's this warmth and this light. And I think that from what you've told me, she was a true embodiment of that at any point, whether or not she was on whatever path she was on at that time. And I know you've said to me over and over again that your mom was definitely a kitchen witch.
Absolutely. I all things happen, in their time, but I'm sad that you didn't get a chance to meet her because I think it would have been, an interesting meeting. I think you guys would have loved each other. I think you have very similar ethoses, just the magic of family and the magic of food. And, when I got into all of this, she was Catholic, and I was
Mm.
raised 12 years Catholic, and she thought I was joining a cult, and so when I was hanging out with my first mentor, it was like, well, we know her, so she's okay. And then when my mentor took me down to Salem, Mass, and Lori
Yeah.
Cabot and all that,
Yeah.
it was like, you've joined a crazy cult. But she knew if I said like, yeah, I love this, that, and she forbid me to do it. I was an adult, so I was still
Yeah.
going to do it. So
Yeah.
she's like, I like this too. Let's go. You
Or she
know,
want to keep an eye on you.
exactly. She's like, and
Right.
she told me 12 years later, she goes, well, if they dragged out the goat or if they brought out a baby to sacrifice or something, I knew I could yank you out of there. And I was like,
Right.
is that what you thought was going to happen? But she sort of did. But by the end of it, she took Witchcraft 1 and 2 with Lori Cabot with me. And,
Amazing.
it was such a life-changing experience. She gave up being Catholic. And our first coven was me, her, and another really good friend of ours, Laura. We keep the moons and the Sabbaths, just the three of us. And, she always said, coming from that Catholic space and having a lot of political thoughts about patriarchy and thoughts about the child abuse issues and everything, and really feeling kind of betrayed by the church. She's like, so I get to commune with the divine in my kitchen or
Hmm.
my backyard.
Hmm.
Animals are sacred, food is sacred,
Hmm.
plants are sacred. And I don't have to talk to a priest to go get forgiveness or to get healing, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm the priestess. That was a really,
Yeah.
and it never really struck me because I didn't buy into all the Catholic stuff so much. For someone who had for all their life and felt betrayed by it, how empowering is it to become a priestess?
Yeah. I mean, I was similarly raised, strict Italian Catholic family. And my family still is, or I should say my family of origin is still very traditional Italian Catholic. And, you know, like you said, the empowerment, and I think that's something that we often find when we find a pagan path, is that empowerment. And that it was always my experience being raised Catholic that you have to do this and go here and do that and stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. It was very much about what you do, right? Like, and you do these things and that makes you good. So even if you're an asshole to the world, it's fine. But if you come to church and you kneel and you pretend to pray, then you're absolved. Whereas for me, being pagan is so much more about the way you are, how you walk through the world. Uh, your being, not what you're doing, your being. And to be able to express that in an everyday way, like your mom did in all of these ways, specifically around home, family, kitchen, food, and all of that stuff, Um, and I know that kitchen witchery is not your thing particularly. Pretty sure you don't cook.
True. So true. I'm not a great cook.
No.
I'm at, college student, bachelor pad level cooking. If I have to, I can eat.
But I've been seeing Steve and Adam have been kicking ass in the kitchen lately.
They have been amazing. And it's been the juggling of all our schedules of online. You think, oh,
Yeah.
you're all home, we're all home to eat together. But like Steve, a lot of his people are on the West Coast, or Adam has clients, I have clients. So we've been
Mhm.
doing like crock pot dishes, and we've been like making sure we can all eat around the same time, which has been, it's a lot of tragedy around COVID, and I don't want to deny that. But
Yeah.
the idea of having dinner every night with my two partners has been amazing.
I definitely have to agree with that. Yeah, there's a lot of heartache and tragedy, and there have been a lot of terrible things that have happened. And I think we could focus on those, or we could focus on the wonderful blessings that some of us have been able to get from not having to be on the road. And I'm so grateful that I'm not traveling every weekend and I can have brunch with my husband every weekend. Like, we've been doing big brunches and trying new coffees, and and I'm ridiculously grateful for that. And again, that doesn't diminish that there has been so much trauma, really, but around some of the joys of being home and being able to cook more. And I think that's kind of a trend, don't you think? I mean, I know you guys are doing, for those of you that don't know, there is a big kitchen witch class that's happening through the temple. Yes.
Yes, there is. Yes. I believe
Yes.
it starts in May with Karen Ainsworth.
Yeah, so I'm not sure when this is airing, because we're pre-recording right now. So um, if this airs early, you may be able to still get into that class. If it does not, You still might be able to get some more information if you go to all the temple pages. How can people find information about the temple and or you, sir?
So the temple is templeofwitchcraft.org. And me is christopherpenczak.com. And we both have Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. We have not ventured into TikTok, and I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
Nah, me neither. Me neither. And for those of you that don't know, they do online rituals right now. There's a lot of good content online, so you definitely want to check that out. And all of this stuff, Christopher, I'm going to put it in the notes so people will be able to find out everything they want about you, and they'll be able to click. So if you're still interested in what Christopher is doing and the temple's doing, please, please, please go on and check all that stuff out. Okay, so I know we cannot linger today because you have another appointment, a very important appointment. So I'm going to ask you my last question before we wrap up. I'm asking this to everyone. If you could have me as the kitchen witch make or cook you a magical meal, what would it be and why?
You know, we've talked about it. Pasta fajoule.
Pasta fajoule. Pasta fajoule.
It's really one of the family kind of heirloom meals and foods that like Steve and Adam don't cook. You know, when my mom, I used to get it from my grandmother and my aunts, and then my mom kind of took over for it. And now that my mom has passed, it's not, I have a recipe written down, but it's not, you know, I'm not a cook and it's not quite the same thing. And just to reconnect in that way, and just knowing your background and your magic and all that we've talked about, that would be my primary one.
I'd be so intimidated to make this for you because every family makes it differently.
Different, right? Exactly.
My pasta fajoule is so simple. It's like 5 ingredients. It's so simple. And I think that's what makes it so good.
You know me and my plainness of all food, you know, so it's probably, our families are probably closer than you think.
Yeah, that's true. But so my idea is that with all of these episodes, to post a recipe that the guest has inspired.
That's awesome.
Right. So, I have a pasta fajoule recipe, so that's already posted, but if that's what you would love more than anything, I guess it could be for the great and powerful Christopher Penczak. You have to do the wave as well. The great and powerful Christopher Penczak. It was like I had a wave for the great Grimaces as well, for Raven Grimace, this kind of a wave like Queen of England, the great Grimaces, and then you have to bow. You have to bow as well. So in honor of Raven Grimace, the great Grimaces, and then now the great and powerful Christopher Penczak has this.
I love we have our own orchestration.
You absolutely do. I'm Italian. If I don't talk with my hands, I would be mute. If you asked me to sit on my hands, I wouldn't be able to talk. You are amazing. And I am ridiculously grateful. I feel like this went way too fast. I feel like it's over too soon.
I'll have tons of books coming out this year. So we'll come back again. And
you would come back?
Do a drinking time, you know?
Oh yeah. Maybe next time we do it in the evening so we can have some wine. Oh, weren't we going to have sangria?
I think we were. I think we said that.
We're going to have spells and sangria, and we were going to sit and talk about spells and sip sangria, because usually Christopher and I go out for Mexican food for lunch and have 4-hour lunches over guacamole, which, let's be fair, you didn't even like until I took you out for guacamole.
That is so true. Well, it's the stone piggy.
Stone piggy.
The stone piggy. And once I knew the stone piggy, I was converted.
It's under new ownership now, so we have to go somewhere else.
Okay.
It's not really, this place is not actually called Stone Piggy, but they make you guacamole in a mortar and pestle that looks like a stone piggy. And so I just called it Stone Piggy. And now it's under new ownership. And the last time I went there, but like before COVID, they didn't have a gluten-free menu anymore. What the fuck? Oh, wow. So now we have, I know. What? Oh, and there's a great new Indian restaurant that opened up here in Derry.
Oh.
It's amazing.
That sounds yummy.
Amazing.
I say, if we can, in the, age of after vaccinations, we just kind of get together and record in the same room. Would that be?
Oh my God.
We don't have to worry about internet or anything.
You could come to my house and we could have pasta fajoule.
I was going to say we'll have drinking and pasta fajoule. We'll be good.
Oh my God. Okay. Okay. That sounds wonderful. Okay. I adore you to pieces. Everyone, thank you so much for listening and hanging out with me and the amazing, great and powerful Christopher Penczak. We love him to pieces. Remember, all of his information will be on the notes for this show. Thank you a million times for being here. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for enjoying this conversational witchcraft. And until next time, I leave you with much gratitude and many blessings. Thanks, everybody.